Now you can see how as the debates and concerns get more and more complex, they get more and more detailed in the arguments and back and forth, to the point that the doctrine of the Trinity today has almost more landmines in trying to discuss it, making most people, I think, even rightfully scared that they don't want to talk about it at all, lest they say something wrong, which is sad, because what the doctrine of the Trinity really is an invitation to us to wrestle with the revelation that we see in Scripture and as discussed in the early church. Theology should be an invitation. Christian theology should be an invitation, but it often isn't, and that causes some problems. We can talk more about this, but I'm going to talk about, in our introduction, a slightly different issue, order in the Trinity, because this is expressive of a lot of different issues or concerns, or functional theology, official issues, maybe some theological no-nos. But when we talk about order in the Trinity, there's sort of an imagery that we come to when we talk about the Trinity. And so what do I mean by that? Well, you can have Father, then Son, then Spirit. So there's a hierarchy. Okay, the Spirit is our connection, but if we have a problem, we go to the middle management, and then we go to the upper management, and all those are connections. Or you could see a kind of feudal order in that. Well, that's a good way of understanding based on some themes, but problematic in others. Or we can have Father and Son, then Spirit. So Father and Son are sort of, there's the core God, and then they're expressive of the Spirit. In fact, what we call the Nicene Creed in Christianity in the West is actually expressive of this. There's a addition that the Western Church added in 1054. It added unofficially a little bit earlier, but this is when the decisive moment where the Eastern Church said no, 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 and the Western Church said yes, 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 really was over an issue related to this image. So if you don't think pictures have a big deal, this has actually caused a split in the church for almost 1,000 years. And so what we have is Father, Son, and both of them are expressive of the Spirit. So the Spirit is sort of, the Father and Son are equal, the Spirit is a lesser. So the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, as the Western version of the Nicene Creed puts it. Or you have Father, then Son and Spirit. Does this look familiar? Who of you are saying Irenaeus right now? Bing, bing, bing. Yes, the Father is God, and the Son and Spirit are expressive of that. Father, Spirit, Son, Spirit, Father, Spirit, Son. This is now introducing a kind of mutuality. And if you put this into motion, start spinning it around, you actually come up with a doctrine that's somewhat like a dance. So they're eternally responding and interacting to each other. Who's in authority? Well, none. But we may encounter one person in a given era or situation or revelation or another, and I say encounter because it's problematic, because they're all there, but if we're approaching from the side of the cross, we might encounter the Son first, or if we're approaching one from the perspective of the Old Testament, we might encounter the Father first. But they're all mutually investing in each other. And then, as I said, if we put this into motion, Father, Son, Spirit in an eternal dance, that has this great term called perichoresis. This is the way that the Eastern Orthodox Church really understands. So perichoresis is a way of talking about a circle dance. It's not like, individual dance. It's a circle dance where everyone is a part. There's a mutuality. There's different roles, but they're all involved in the same dance. So that it's one dance, a complex unity. Spin it around, perichoresis, as I said. Use that term with your friends and press your neighbors and fellow workers with good theological terms. This is probably one of my favorite ideas because I love the idea of God always being in motion. God is not a static hierarchy. God is in motion and engaged, and I think that is a dance and a song in creation that just fills me with a lot of inspiration, but also fills out how we can understand the dynamic interplay between Father, Son, and Spirit in the revelation of the New Testament. Whew! So what does it matter? What does the Trinity matter? What is the good reason for Christian theology to have a good Trinitarian theology? And for those of you who aren't Christian, what is a good reason for you to engage the doctrine of the Trinity, maybe as a way of understanding broader Christianity better, or maybe as a way of offering a better critique against the kinds of distortions you see in Christianity? This lecture isn't just meant to inspire you. It's also meant to say, if you're going to argue against Christianity or critique it, understand it first. So our understanding of the Trinity affects our views on the shape of reality. If God is three in one, then reality is expressive of that in complex kind of unity. And I think our understanding of reality now actually understands a kind of complexity and interactivity that is across scale. I think of quantum physics here, and you have particles that are united with each other in a crazy kind of way, even over immense distances. Is the shape of reality? We can also talk in terms of involvement in creation. Is the fundamental nature of reality hierarchy, or is it equality? Is the fundamental shape of reality authoritarian? There's a line from here to here, so we can justify forms of colonialism or other things based on our place in the hierarchy. Well, Trinitarian theology has effectively done that, from Father to Son to Spirit to church leader and so on. Or is the shape of reality with and together? We are participants, we are with and together, we are not all the same, we all have different roles and places. Or over and above. Again, how we understand the Trinity actually, whether or not we admit it or not, shapes how we view God's involvement and presence in this world, and thus our own participation in that with God, but also with others. If we see with and together as a fundamental shape of God's community, we see community then expressive of that across all the boundaries of society. God is drawing everyone into this dance, not so that we become God, but that the radiance, the echo, the reverberation of God involves us into this circle among circles. So what does it matter? Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I think it really does. But the real key for understanding the Trinity as part of Christian doctrine, it's not just philosophical meandering for those people who have too much time on their hands. It's not a way of making something simple, Jesus, into something more complex, the Trinity, so that we can seem smarter or better. It's not to confuse people who might try to come to terms with Christianity and then come up against 3 equaling 1, and then we can always sort of keep them on our toes by adjusting this theology accordingly. No. I think the doctrine of the Trinity is an important doctrine to start with, because the key is to have coherence with a revelation that we take seriously. As Christians, we take Scripture seriously. As Christians, we also take church history seriously. Whether all Christians and all churches believe it or not, so much of our doctrine has been shaped knowingly or unknowingly by the many generations who have come before and who have contributed different reflections on revelation and experience with God. Christians say we have an experience with God, and this experience with God takes shape in different ways. But how we interpret that is another level on top of the experience. And so the doctrine of the Trinity is a way of having coherence, taking all these things, Scripture, revelation, history, reflections, and our own experiences, and in the best way possible, being coherent with each other. The truth is, the doctrine of the Trinity really insists on being open to a understanding of God that honestly doesn't fit into our categories. The Trinity doesn't in so many ways make sense. It's actually a doctrine that's more complex than what our human minds are able to really handle. So we use analogies, and the analogies are insufficient, but the analogies help us on our way. So we propose a lot of really complex ways of understanding and complex words. The challenge is that we're trying to fit together the various pieces that have been handed to us. The sad thing is, so often this is done with an immense amount of arrogance and, admittedly, its own version of power, that it becomes a club and a way to divide rather than help. Because the fact is that it is as complex as the Trinitarian theology is, and I think as rightfully it, as much as possible, brings together all the various elements of it. The idea that we can understand God in God's own being and essence and substance is itself pretty arrogant. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try. We've been invited to try. In Christian theology, we have been given certain tools and invited. We've been given reason. We have a lot of good reasons to wrestle with these questions, but with humility, and above all, with love. Because as John in his letters say, God is love, and thus the Trinity, above all things, if nothing else, is love.